All right, what is going on, people? You know that sound. It is the Unfiltered Band. It means, yes, it is another edition of Unfiltered in October. Unfiltered coming your way right here and now, officially. So go down as episode 117 of Unfiltered as we sit here live on a Tuesday, once again preparing after a rainout for a Game 3 of the World Series. Games 3, 4, and 5 now scheduled for tonight on Tuesday as we sit here live. And, of course, welcome to all you Spotify, Apple, and podcast folks, wherever you get them. Wednesday, Game 4. Thursday, Game 5. Off day for the travel now Friday. Saturday, Game 6 if necessary. And the same goes for Sunday night for game number 7 at Minute Maid, should we get that far as we get this far, by thanking the Unfiltered Band and welcoming you to what should be a crazy, busy, bananas good show as we prepare for Game 3. Not the same preparation we had yesterday because there are changes because of the rain, especially and specifically with the rotation in Philadelphia and the questions now surrounding Zach Wheeler. We'll get into all of that. Myself, and all of you, 3 ways through the chat. You could jump on board. I'll connect with you throughout the course of the show right here as I put it out there in the chat. If you pop it open on your Twitter box or on YouTube, whether you're watching on my YouTube channel, which you can get on my Twitter in the bio at Casey Stern, subscribe and watch all of our 116 now plus episodes and whatever else you want with all the content. And, of course, Believes as well. That's BLEAV. Believe this, big show. Part of the Believe Network. Joe Ceraulo will join me coming up here in about 15 minutes. We'll break down Game 3, look ahead to tonight and what it means and the changes. And as much as things change, they stay the same. Reunited, and it feels so good. One of my better friends in life and in the game, and a guy I had the pleasure of sitting right next to on a set for 7 postseasons with Turner. And he has way more than that. 502 more in terms of home runs in his career, 509 of them for the 9-time All-Star and should-be Hall of Famer, Gary Sheffield, who will join me at 12:30 Eastern Time here live on the show. As always, you can connect with us, and we are here in part because we're presented by our good friends at BetOnline. Basketball's back. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. Latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends, all on BetOnline. As your continued source for your sports wagering information, BetOnline's got live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. It is always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports events, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, even golf. All simple, all this way. Head over to betonline.ag. That's betonline.ag to join. Get your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. But make sure you use this promo code. It's BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. It's BetOnline, where the game starts as we get started here on what should be a busy show. Rain has had effects in World Series many, many times in the past, and you never know what the impact of them is going to be until after you see this series play out. I'll give you an example. 2011, sitting doing the pre and post at that time for MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM. And we're there in Texas, and it was supposed to rain. It was supposed to pour, raining, snoring, the old man and all that. And then nothing happened. But they had rained the game out early enough that it must have been about 4 or 5 o'clock the latest, well before yesterday's, that it got rained out. And we knew that we were going to have an extra day off between Game 6 and Game 7. It gave a couple of advantages, they thought, to the Texas Rangers at the time on where they wanted to go. And they continued to go, not with Derek Holland, who then could have turned around, who had pitched a brilliant Game 4 on a short rest and did not. They gave the ball to Matt Harrison in Game 7. But what was bigger in that spot was that Chris Carpenter was now available to turn around after he would not have been able to start to pitch a Game 7. He was good enough, so were the Cardinals, and they win the World Series. When the Phillies got this rain out yesterday, a lot of people looked at this and said advantageous to the Phillies, and it still may be. But the biggest reason why people thought it was advantageous to the Phillies was because they thought it would turn Zach Wheeler closer in this series to have him throw out there again. So when Ranger Suarez was named the Game 3 starter and that was flipped, and remember, going back to yesterday, we talked about this with Mark Feinsand, the reason Rob Thompson ended up making the switch from Suarez Game 3, Syndergaard Game 4, to starting Syndergaard Game 3 and moving and flipping Suarez was because he had to come into Game 1 in relief, strike out Alvarez, get up, warm up, get heated, get in a max effort spot, and go sit back down. And they thought from the way they looked at it, and they being him and his staff with Caleb Cotton, the pitching coach, and so on, there'd be an extra 20, 25 pitches for Suarez should he turn around a day later. And they thought that it was worth it for what could be 1-2 innings of extra baseball from Suarez to have him pitch a game 4. That's why they had Thor in game 3 initially. When the rainout happened and we heard that Suarez was going to pitch a game 3, you then figured, okay, now Syndergaard going to be off the board. He could piggyback or be needed wherever in a game 3. And you're going to get Aaron Nola in game 4 and Zach Wheeler in game 5. And then the off day, and then turn around, maybe Nola in game 6 or Suarez, Nola or Wheeler or both in a game 7. Putting the Phillies in an advantageous position because of the rain. Then the news came out. Because of arm fatigue of Zach Wheeler, a guy who we mentioned and talked about this with Mike Stanton after his start, among others here on this show, noticeably the velocity a couple of ticks down, and that's a big difference when you're throwing 95 instead of 97, 98 consistently. It's not why he gave up those hits, I think, early in that game. I think he got ambushed, and the credit goes to the Astros, but you saw that he did not have the same stuff. You saw that Wheeler was not relying as heavily on the fastball, and you saw that the velocity was not where it is, and he knows that. Then it was announced that not Suarez after game 3, but we're going to Nola in game 4, and Noah Syndergaard would be the guy who gets game 5, says Rob Thompson, if Syndergaard is not used in relief in game 3 or 4. If he is, Kyle Gibson, remember him? Yep, a great pickup, a guy who gives you reliable innings and all of that, and was that way for a number of different teams, including the years he was with the Twins. Then seemed that way at times for the Phillies, but he's been off the reservation on this team for a long time. He's not doghouse, he's an outhouse, he's not in a house. He's not part of this scenario. So why would it be Syndergaard if he's not used Gibson? Well, then Rob Thompson's saying that Zach Wheeler is feeling arm fatigue. They asked about his elbow. We're dealing with a guy who's got injury history. And he said, no injury. Nothing to worry about. Now, first of all, he's not going to tell you anyway if they're trying to grit and bear it and get him through. Not going to tell you anyway. It's not Belichickian in this spot or like hockey with like, that's a lower body injury. What the hell does that mean? They're not going to be that way. He's not going to tell you, however. But what he is saying is, it was very clear and at least seemingly forthright about the fact that it's just fatigue. But that it would be not Wheeler in game 5. They would still give him, now remember, the extra day. So you've got the travel day Friday, which means Zach Wheeler gets to back up all the way to Saturday. Now, this still would allow in game 7 a tag team of Suarez and Nola to be where you go. But as I wrote down here in the notes for today, and wrote it down in bold, if I would have told you before this series, now look, there's a lot of if I would have told you with the Phillies, because nobody thought they'd be here in the first place. But when they got here, and I said to you, hey, my gut says Phillies in 6, but the brains, because of the pitching depth, says Astros in 6. That's where a lot of people were because of the same reason, the depth of pitching. But Wheeler was not in that depth question. Wheeler was at the high end. And I told you Wheeler was going to outpitch Verlander. You probably would have told me you'd put a bet on that, especially based on Verlander's World Series track record. And by the way, Justin Verlander still going to be where he is in sitting, and we're still going to see McCullers, and look, it looks like Javier now. But when you look at where you're at with Wheeler, as I wrote down here, if I would have told you that Philadelphia would have to win this series with Zach Wheeler pitching only twice, you would have told me there's no chance. Now, everything about the Phillies has been no chance. Everything has seemed like it doesn't work. Everything has seemed like it can't be real, especially when their bullpen has gone from such a mockery for 4 or 5 years running to becoming such a star of the show the way it's been. And Rob Thompson has led that category and led the league in. Hey, nobody would have thunk, and here we are. In a year where you had to, relieve Joe Girardi of his duties as a terrific manager, a World Series winning manager, not the right guy. This wasn't the right fit for this group. But if I would have told you before the series, you got to win this series with Zach Wheeler pitching only twice, how many Philly fans out there would have been confident? If you're a Philly fan, whether you're watching this, whether it's live, you're listening to it on the podcast and delay, and if you're listening to it and it's not live, don't chat, obviously, but get at Casey Stern. I want you to tweet me when you hear this. I want you to tell me, if I would have told you, even as a Philly fan, Wheeler only pitches twice in this series max, would you have thought you could win this series? The answer would be no. There were people who thought, well, we're getting Wheeler 1, 4, and 7. Then there were people who thought, okay, when he pitches game 2, he'll pitch game 2, and game 6 could be a closeout, or you could see him perhaps maybe on a shorter rest. Maybe you get him in a tag team spot, then on a throw day in a game 7. You're still trying to find a way to fit that guy in more than twice. But now you know why Wheeler got game 2. Now you know why Nola got game 1. Now you know when you see the rain out put you in a position, because look how quickly Rob Thompson's like, oh, I know Suarez in game 3. And now he's your game 7 guy probably. But now right away, I mean, he knew, hey, look, I'm not messing around. I'm putting Thor in there. Okay, Suarez. But then when you hear game 4 is Nola, and then game 5 is Syndergaard, but if he pitches in relief, it's Gibson. Not, hey, we'll wait and see. They didn't have to name it wouldn't be Wheeler. They didn't have to say anything. They could have said, we're going to see game 3 and 4 and let you know. He could have said Suarez in game 3, and then we'll figure it out. Then maybe down 2-1, you throw Nola. Up 2-1, you sneak Syndergaard in there, right, in game 4, and then you throw Nola in game 5. I was surprised that Rob Thompson laid the whole thing out because he had no need to lay the whole thing out. Now, I'm not getting on the guy. He's been brilliant, but it is a little bit odd. It doesn't make a lot of sense because there's no reason to do it. But for him to be that forthright and matter of fact about, hey, look, I got Suarez game 3. Game 4, we are going to bring Nola forward. And then game 5, I got Syndergaard or Kyle Gibson. And you're telling me Wheeler not a chance. We're not seeing him game 5. We're not seeing him he's not coming out of the pen. There's not some sneaky play where, hey, they're up 3-1 in a series. He's game 5. We're waiting all the way till Saturday to try and get Wheeler in there with an additional day. Now you know you got a problem with Zach Wheeler. Now, we've seen injuries at the end of seasons to pitchers who have found dynamic performances. Look no further. Met fans, cover your ears, because Max Scherzer was terrible in the postseason and late down the stretch in that series against the Braves, too, which for the division was pretty much the playoffs. So between that and San Diego, it was awful, giving up home runs left and right, still clearly troubled by the oblique, and 37 years old. But you go back to 2019, and I was there, and there were people that didn't know if Max Scherzer was going to make another start. They didn't know how he would make another start. And then 2-3 days later, he's not only dealing, but he dealing to help that team go win a World Series in a remarkable way. Bumpy roads to beautiful places with 4, count them 1, 2, 3, 4 wins, all on the road at Minute Maid to go win that series. And that was in a situation which was an actual injury, even worse than just a fatigue issue, and nobody knew what they'd get, and way older than Wheeler is now. So this does not mean that Zach Wheeler cannot pitch very well in game 6. But here's what it does mean. Let's go back to it again. If I would have told you, if you're a Philly fan, and this is some big banana size, this is huge in terms of stories, big. The story of how Philly wins this series before it began, it started with Nola and Wheeler throwing 4-5 starts of brilliant baseball in the series. Nola gets in a 5-0 hole against Verlander. They got to come back. Then in game 2, Wheeler is down 3-0, 4 batters in, and now you find out you can only use Wheeler twice in the series. When you are in a spot where you are going into this postseason and in this series as a Philly fan, thinking we're winning it because of Wheeler and Nola, and now I am resigned to you're only seeing Wheeler twice in the series and who knows what version the second time. And the first 2 times, they combined, gave up 10 runs, and you came out somehow even 1-1. Philly seemed to defy odds consistently, but this now puts you in a very, very precarious spot as you sit there if you're a Philadelphia Philly fan. We talk about that much, much more. Guy knows a thing or two about pitching and much, much more. Our guy, Joe Ceraulo, kind enough to join us once again here on the show. Joe, appreciate you, buddy. How are you?
Casey, doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I want to start here. If I would have told you before the series, even if you were sitting there thinking, because I said before the series, gut told me somehow Phillies in 6, but I took Astros in 6 because my brain just was too powerful with the difference in the depth of pitching, right? If I would have told you, even if you're on the Philly end thinking positive, you got to win the World Series against Houston and Wheeler's only pitching twice, would you ever think that that is possible for them to do so? And now, how difficult is it when we know Wheeler's only throwing twice.
It definitely makes it much more of an uphill battle than it already was. I mean, look, it's almost in today's day and age unreasonable to expect a pitcher to go 3 times, even in a 7-game set. It just doesn't happen anymore. You know, Madison Bumgarner is a rare exception. But that's what should have happened with Zach Wheeler. I mean, having him go game 2 instead of game 1 made zero sense to me. He would have had enough rest. I think he would have been on 4 days rest going game 1 like a normal start. And it would have set him up to, you know, at least be a prolonged opener in game 7. Even if he can't go 6-7 innings on that short rest, at least go out there, give him 3, give him 4, get off to a hot start. Now things are a little dicey for Philly. You know, I mean, they've changed up their rotation a bit. They've got Suarez game 3. Who knows when Syndergaard, if he's going to start, when he's going to start. I don't really like what's going on with that pitching staff.
Yeah, Thompson yesterday, you know, look, when he put Suarez in game 3, that was fine with me, made sense. I was surprised he wasn't game 3 anyway, even though he would have had a shorter leash and maybe not as many pitches because he had to, you know, get up, heat up, get Alvarez out in a max effort spot, and then go sit back down. I would have thought they would have rode him anyway with the momentum going back to Philly even at 1, and then ride the pen and try and take that game and let Syndergaard pitch game 4, and whatever happens, happens. But to hear now it's Suarez game 3, Nola game 4, and Syndergaard game 5, and if not Syndergaard, Kyle Gibson. If Syndergaard pitches in game 3 or 4, Rob Thompson saying yesterday it's going to be Kyle Gibson in game 5, and that Wheeler's not pitching till game 6 because of fatigue. It tells you why game 2 happened the way you just pointed out and what was being masked, right? It tells you why the velocity was what we saw from Wheeler in his start, which was touchdown, at least 2-3 ticks throughout the way, and he was going away from it. Very similar to DeGrom in that weird game against the Padres where he just lost his fastball, didn't have support of it, and knew it wasn't right. Wheeler was going away, going way more to the other pitches than with the fastball. And I don't think that was because they ambushed him early. I think that's because he knew he didn't have it and the impact of what was happening to those pitches early. To hear that's scary. That now you start to get worried that you don't even know what version, Joe, of Zach Wheeler's showing up in game 6 when he pitches on Saturday.
No, and what's terrifying there is, you know, Zach Wheeler, look, you know, you just mentioned Jacob deGrom, and this may be really high praise, but when Zach Wheeler's on, he's as good as Jacob deGrom. He's as good as anyone in the game when he's on. And so to know that, you know, he's fatigued, that he doesn't have it. We saw last year what happened when Max Scherzer, who went to the Dodgers deadline, was 8-0 with them with a sub-2 ERA, got fatigued, didn't have it. And, you know, it really hurt that team come the NLCS against Atlanta. So, you know, this is awful timing. I mean, you just mentioned Kyle Gibson. If he goes out there for a game 5, especially at Citizens Bank Park, it's a home run derby for the Houston Astros. I mean, do you recall, Casey, the Sunday afternoon game where Jose Buto made his MLB debut?
Of course I do. Of course.
We were down, what, like 8-2, 7-2. And I texted my cousin at the time. I said, watch us win this 10-9. I think we won it 11-10 because Kyle Gibson was pitching. I mean, to have him, you know, he shouldn't even be on a World Series roster, let alone, you know, starting a game. I mean,
and he's only there, Joe, for the 14th inning. He's only there for the down 7 runs. We got to give up this game. Let's say up 3-1 in a series in a game 5. Not worth using anybody else in the pen. Let him ride 5 innings. Basically wait it out. Tim Wakefield, by the way, made a performance like that, an appearance like that for the Red Sox in a game they lost 19-8 the day before they turned back and won 4 in a row against the Yankees. So sometimes those are valuable. But that's the only reason he's on the staff. But to me, to hear that, now, this start in game 3 becomes so important. Aaron Nola has not been very good the last couple of times out. He has not been dominant. I don't want to hear about what he did in the regular season against the Astros because, you know, look, Verlander blew a 5-0 lead, but they were up 5-0, and Aaron Nola made that start, right?
Yeah.
So if Suarez, who's been, even Steven, not getting enough credit, very, very good, if they don't win this game tonight, now all the pressure's on Aaron Nola because without Wheeler behind him and possibly Thor or Gibson, you can't go down 3-1 probably against the Astros anyway. I get that. But if they lose this game tonight, your season's sitting there on the arm of whatever kind of start Aaron Nola makes tomorrow. How much do you think that means that we're going to see the whole bullpen doled out tonight to make sure they get a 2-1 lead in this series and at least continue to maintain momentum on the Phillies side?
Yeah, there's no doubt Philly's going to treat this game 3 like it's a game 7. And, oh, by the way, forget their pitching woes. It's just if you look historically at any 7-game series in the MLB, you win game 3, there's about a 70% chance if it's tied 1-1, you're going to win the series. So this game is just the all-important game in this series. And, Houston Pro's pro going out there. Lance McCullers, the guy is no stranger to the big stage. He's pitched in game 7s. He's shoved in game 7s. It's really all on Suarez. And, we saw Suarez in relief the other day, and people say, oh, well, that's his bullpen day. He'll be fine. It really is different. It's one thing to throw a 10, 15 pitch bullpen after 2 days after your start. It's another thing to have to go into a game and execute spots and have the adrenaline and have the max effort pitches.
Which he did. So, give him credit. I mean, he struck out Alvarez, who was 2 for 2 against him. Suarez has been brilliant. I mean, you think about what he's done closing out the last series, right? I mean, he's had. Look, I'm not comparing him to Julio Urias. Please understand for people listening. But he's been. You think about Urias closing a World Series with 3 innings a couple of years ago. He's become a guy that Rob Thompson relies on. I think even though his high end's not as much as Wheeler, we know that, and even Nola when he's right, Suarez is kind of the most really, I guess expected, output every. He's gonna pitch them into the 5th inning tonight. He may be up 3-2 or down 3-2. He's probably not going to shut him out, but he's going to keep you in the game. Joe, I don't even know if Nola does that because I don't know which version shows up. I don't know what I got out of Wheeler. Forget Thor and now Kyle Gibson. I mean, there's a lot of pressure here on Ranger Suarez tonight for a guy who's pitching in a game 3.
Yeah, guy who's, by the way, it's his first full year as a starter in the big leagues. I mean, yeah, we're going to learn what he's made of. He's done it twice so far this postseason, like you mentioned, closing out the NLCS. He's done it twice coming out of the bullpen. But, his one start against Houston in the regular season, it was actually his worst start of the regular season. So we'll see. None of that stuff matters. I don't want to sit here and say because he stunk against them in September that's going to translate into tonight. Verlander was 5 hitless against Philly and then, started off, almost 4 hitless against them in game 1 and then all hell broke loose. So, there's no necessarily translation. But I don't know how Suarez is going to do. It's the first time he's pitching, starting a game rather, in a World Series. And there's a lot of pressure on him because not only does he have to pitch well, which is the expectation every time out there, but he's got to pitch deep because if he doesn't, his team's in trouble the next 3 games.
Do you, as much as everybody gets on the Astros, and look, I get it for what they did, and trust me, I know what they got away with. I know what they got away with immunity. I know what they got, all that, right? With facing cardboard cutouts instead of but they're going to face a lot of garbage cans. Not as many. It's going to be Halloween dress-up night still in Philadelphia tonight, a day later. I think you can expect that, right? So people will still be dressing up as garbage cans and who knows what else. But I got to admit, maybe, getting too much time as a dad and getting softy a little bit. But I'm thinking of like the Jeremy Pena's and what a great story it is, what he's done, and how great Alvarez is, right? Not on that team. The McCormick stories. Here's a guy who hit a home run of Garrett Cole in a huge spot, right? Think about how many other guys, Framber Valdez, right? When I see his energy, I know that whether you want to use nervous tics or whatever words, like, I don't think he's cheating. I really don't think this is not an issue. But I kind of feel for some of the other guys on the team that they maybe don't get a lot of credit and they're so hated as a group that we're forgetting about those stories. Do you feel that way just as a baseball fan? Like Pena is a great example of this. Look what this guy's doing. And I think part of why we don't champion it so much is because he's wearing that jersey.
100%. And how about the guy we talked about last week when I came on the show, Dusty Baker? He had nothing to do with that. And there's no guy that I'd rather see win than Dusty Baker. So, yeah, I think you're 1,000% right. I always point to Alvarez, to Pena, to Dusty, guys that had nothing to do with 2017. Look, this whole, everyone hates the Astros thing. I think personally it's a little overplayed. I don't like Altuve. I don't like Bregman. That's me personally. But I actually, as a collective unit, really love this team. I love the pitching staff. I love guys like Christian Javier, the young stud who started the year in the bullpen, became one of the more effective starters in baseball. I mean, I think that they're actually a really great story. And top to bottom, trash cans are not, cheating or not, they're just simply the best team in baseball. So I appreciate that, whereas a lot of people, just still won't give them a pass for what happened 5-6 years ago.
And I like Maldonado, too. I mean, he's a really likable player. And, like, that story about, like, I first of all, I didn't know that rule. Nobody seems to have known the rule. Players I've talked to, they don't know the rule, right? Yeah. About the grandfather, it's a BS. It's stupid. The whole grandfathering in or whatever. But people, I've seen this. So if you at the case, it's like, people want to know what Albert, Pujols is eating for breakfast, let alone borrow his bats. So here's a dude who's a friend who borrows the bats of a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame thinking, let some of that rub off on me. He's not cheating. He had no idea what it was. And really, it's more about whether the bats were breakable or not. Were you marveling at how much people were trying to rope the two things we discussed together? Like, I get it, but I couldn't believe that people were really trying to put some onus on Maldonado like he was trying to cheat there. He tried to get some rub off from Albert Pujols. That's about it.
It just made me roll my eyes because, Casey, especially in today's day and age with social media, right? And everyone's got cameras on everything and everything's a viral clip, right? Like, you expect it. Valdez, to your point, when he was going like this with his hands and whatever he's doing, whether he's getting sweat off or anything, people are instantly saying he's cheating. I mean, it's just, Valdez switched gloves after a couple innings. Now, I've heard in the past that he's done that because one of the gloves you could kind of see when he was gripping his curveball and the other one you couldn't see. So it's just like, everything's always going to go back to cheating because people want it to. People can say whatever they want on social media, twist things any way that they want. At the end of the day, like to your point, who the hell knew that rule with the bat? And first off, why are you allowing guys, if you're going to make a bat illegal, why are you grandfathering it in?
Yeah, that's right. Why Pujols can't use it then either? Pujols, it's what makes it so stupid. Robert gets
it's ridiculous.
It is stupid. And he says, do you think the Philly crowd element's overblown, given the fact these shows have been forced to become more resilient to hostile crowds? Look, first of all, they didn't have to deal with the hostility they would have if the year after it happened, and they got caught, the cardboard cutouts weren't there because they couldn't yell at them. So they didn't have to deal with as much. But in general, you mentioned Madison Bumgarner. I know it's not Philly, but I was in Kansas City at the stadium the day that he had the best pitching performance I've ever seen. And nobody cared what was going on. It's on the road. We see road teams win all the time. You and I root for a team that was at home. That didn't seem to matter against the Braves or against San Diego. How much do you think is made too much about how the crowd might affect the actual game the next 3 days?
Yeah, I think in baseball, home field advantage actually matters way less than in most other sports. I was just doing a guest spot over the weekend for a betting show on college football. And college football, the home team wins, I think, upwards of 70% of the time, right? You want to talk about a home field advantage. College football is where it's at. Baseball, not so much. You remember the 2019 World Series, Houston Nationals? The road team won all 7 games that series. So, I don't think it matters a whole lot. I think Houston's going to have a lot of fun at Citizens Bank Park personally, because it's a really hitter-friendly park. And, Philly fans are going to be Philly fans. I don't think anyone treats the Astros worse than Yankee fans, so they've already dealt with the worst.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal either. How do you think it goes here in Game 3? What do you expect tonight?
I'm expecting, I said last week on your show, Stros in 6, so I'm going to say that they take 2 out of 3 here in Philly. I'm going to say that they take I'll go with tonight in Game 5. I think Verlander will get his first World Series win in his 9th try, and then they'll close it out in Houston on Saturday night now.
Yeah, which, by the way, we'll put Zach Wheeler now in Game 6. Appreciate you, Joe. Thank you. I'll bug you as the series goes long enough. Be well.
Thanks so much, Casey.
All right, there he is, Joe Ceraulo. Great stuff from here at Believe. Again, 1-1 sitting in Game 3, a rainout. So we're back to where we expected to be here for this third game of the World Series. Just a day later, I'm sure people will still be all, dolled up in Halloween attire in Philadelphia and getting crazy in all sorts of different ways as the Philadelphia Phillies will throw Ranger Suarez in Game 3, Nola in Game 4, and then in Game 5, it looks like Syndergaard or Kyle Gibson before they turn things back into Game 6 and Game 7. So Zach Wheeler not going to go until the 6th game of this series, which is just, again, when you get a guy like Wheeler who you're trying to ride your horses, to see that dude pitch only twice in a series, not easy. Not easy. Difficult thing to do to try and win that way. That's why there's a lot of Ranger Suarez, the guy who gets the start tonight for Philadelphia. And on the other side, I mean, that's the thing. Lance McCullers has been through this before. He pitched Game 7s. He was, out there in a Game 7 against a Yankee team where they were down 3-2 at one point in the series. That's in the LCS in 2017. And he sat there and he and Morton piggybacking back and forth with a Game 7 to go win a World Series. So he's been there before. Not going to be afraid of this moment in Philadelphia, regardless of what the crowd says. But I think when you look at Lance and you think about Javier and the guys Dusty has, he's set up with a little bit more right now, despite Nola and Wheeler. You got Nola coming off a bad start, and he got who knows what version of Zach Wheeler I get with arm fatigue now, as he'll wait until game 6 here coming up on Saturday. We continue with you, take you for about another half an hour or so here in October Unfiltered. As always, welcome to everybody on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere where you get your podcast. As we'll get a chance here in a couple of seconds to welcome in and reunite with my dude, Gary Sheffield, who's going to be on board. And I see him down preparing in the left, and he's got glasses on like me, which means we're both old and senile and can't see. And I see him smiling. So we'll get him in here. We appreciate Chef for hopping on board. What's up, brother? How are you, man?
I'm good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing so good, man. It's so good to see you. Do I want to ask at the beginning of this how the golf game is?
Nicely is on point right now.
Okay.
77 the other day, so.
Oh, okay. Now, are you in what area have you improved most? Because I mean, look, I know how much you have diligently put into this. The way you were as a hitter is how you've been now as a golfer, yet much more frustrated. You struck out like 80 times a season, which is basically like a 3-week span for hitters now, Chef. So how much have you limited the strikeouts and the bad swings in the golf area? What's the area you've improved the most? I mean, give me the breakdown.
Well, I had to figure out where was my weakness, and I found it in the driver, long off the tee, which it brings a lot of things into play, and so it puts me in bad positions on my second shot. So I focus a lot on getting the driver in the fairway, and then when I get 130 in is where I used to struggle with putting a little bit, 3-putt sometimes, which I shouldn't do. If I get my shot that 130 in, if I get the shot at within 10 feet, I'm pretty much going to make a par. So I worked on that, my chipping game, and once I figured that out, now it's just different courses of playing, taking the right line, knowing where you're lined up at. So that's part of it. A lot of times your bad shot is not a bad shot. It's just alignment was off.
Well, I just love the way you're digging into it just like a hitter. It's not like you don't take it seriously. My goodness, dude. Come on now. But speaking of which, I got to go here. Like when you hear the Yankees in the series last week struck out 17, 18 times in a game, right? And now I know you face some pitchers that in a game they go deal. They strike out 14, 15 guys. Pedro do something like that, or a Maddox, right? You play behind guys like that. So it can happen on a given day. But it's happening like every day. You're a guy who struck out 82 times in a season, and we're mad at yourself. You struck out 82 times.
Yeah.
What is it like watching the hitters of today in a postseason, Chef?
Well, for me, like I told you before, Case, I don't agree with the brand of baseball. I understand the brand of baseball, and I understand why they're doing what they're doing. But there's times where they put the style of play over winning a baseball game. And I think that if you ask anybody that played this game, they would tell you the object is to win the game. And whatever you have to do to win the game, if you have to bunt, if you have to move a guy over, you have to do the little things to give a guy an opportunity to drive in a run after you, then that's playing baseball. But just going out there trying to hit a home run, trying to hit a 3-run home run. I mean, if my era was playing today, these records would be shattered. Every record in the book would be shattered because I knew if I didn't hit 300 and hit 30 home runs and drive in 120 and score 100 runs and get 100 walks to set up my guys behind me, then I wasn't considered a good baseball player. So these guys can go up there and strike out, try to hit a 2-run homer. They may connect on one and it may come through and they look like heroes, but they don't even realize how easy that is to do. I got 4 at-bats to try to hit 1 home run. Pretty much I can do that every day if I tried to. So I don't care how hard a guy is throwing, what kind of breaking ball he has. I'm going to sit on one pitch and I'm going to get it and I'm going to hit it out. So that's really not sellable to me. I don't know about other people, and I think the brand of baseball is what people are saying today is today's game. And like I've always said, I'm not going to be one of these old guys and say, man, this game sucks and this and that. The game is hard. I know it's hard. And when you're facing a lot of relievers, I always said when a reliever comes in the game, he's pretty much the easiest guy to hit, to be honest with you. Because basically he has to get strike one. And if he don't get strike one, now he don't know what to go to next because he just got in the game. So I take that first pitch away from all relievers, and now I make them regular pitchers. And so these guys are really not using smarts and understanding the situation and how to set up a pitcher.
I've said this before. I've said this to you before, but I'll say it because you're humble. You wouldn't say it yourself. But you're a guy, if you wanted to do it, which I know you don't, could be a hitting coach tomorrow and be the best hitting coach in the league. I know that your current players, and I know working, sitting next to you 7 years, just listening during those games, learn more about hitting than anything. I'll never forget sitting next to you in our cigar lounge when Kershaw got the out in the, in relief. And you said they're not really going to let him face Rendon, right? And Rendon came up. You said, "Oh, it's gone. Don't look." And it hits a home run. And then you said, "Well, Soto's going to get him too." And he got it because you guys been in that moment, so you watch the body language. And I want to ask you this because you've seen Bryce's career. You've seen him come in as a guy who had all the tools, Chef, right? MVP long ago with DC, but people getting mad at him about everybody. He had the LeBron kind of really in the age of social media, and you would have dealt with this in the age of social media too, the kind of player you were, having that LeBron thing on the back of no matter what you do is not enough. How proud are you to see what's happened to him, not only as a hitter, but as a leader, and the way that he's turned his career now to attract to be in Cooperstown someday?
I'm very proud of this kid, man. I now, if anybody that asks me, he's one of the guys I would pay to see. I would pay to go out and watch this kid because he's no nonsense baseball player. He wants to win. Everything about him, and I'll tell you, everything about this guy, he's old school, he's new school, he's everything. And when you talk about a player that goes out there and the teammates feed off of him, you can see it. When he comes through, people just, everybody through the lineup just start clicking. And so even with Houston up 5 runs, with him being on the team, he makes the difference in how they're going to come back because they're always looking at where's Bryce Harper? Where is he coming up in the order? All of these things is a factor. And people don't look at baseball players as being that impactful in situations they're not even in. They're just on the team. And when their turn is up, the whole lineup is the other team is looking at the lineup is when he's coming back up. So he's affecting everything. But this kid, he's a hard worker. I could tell he's a good teammate. I would love to play with a guy like him. And anytime there's a big moment, this guy loves that moment because he's been in the spotlight, like you said, and he has all that attention on him. And the tougher the situation is, I wouldn't pitch to him at all.
I know you know how good Verlander is. I know you know him and are friendly with him. I were with him in a short time when you were in Detroit. How much do you think it's eating at him that this World Series ERA continues to go the wrong direction? He's had so many great starts, Chef, and what a great year. And he's going to go to the Hall of Fame, and he's had a great year. He's going to win a Cy Young this year. He had good postseason, and then he gets to the World Series, and then here we go again. You know how it is. That's how that tag gets on you, where you just can't do it. I mean, how much do you think it's eating at a guy with the kind of confidence level and the ego you got to have to be Justin Verlander that he's not able to get those numbers down in a World Series?
Well, right now he's just snake bitten. That's a term in baseball when things you just can't understand just don't go your way. And that's the game. That's just the way the game is. But one thing I know about Justin is that I don't care what the situation is, he's going to go out there and compete. He's the most competitive guy I know. He's like a position player, I used to always say, like Mariano Rivera. They may be on the mound, but they're pretty much in tune with the whole game. They're basically dissecting hitters, even if they're not pitching. They're telling pitchers what to do and how to do it. But when he gets in this game, I think this next game he gets in, he knows if he get another 5-run lead like that, he's going to pretty much shut them down. Because while I was watching that at bat, Castellano, He's a friend of mine as well. He was up to the plate with 2 outs, and they was winning 5-0 with 1 guy on. That's the one mistake that I say Verlander made when he had him 2 strikes and flipped him a breaking ball that was low. And he made that mistake, and he extended the inning. Now Justin head starts spinning about, okay, now they hit a 3-run homer. I let him back in the game. Instead of attacking him with high fastballs, get out of that inning, that game is over. And so I think that's probably eating at him more than anything else that happened in that game. He knows that's the one pitch he shouldn't have thrown.
Well, one thing you always say, don't slow a guy's bat down, right?
That's
If he can't catch up, why he slowed it down? And I'll tell you what, because you mentioned that game, I got to ask you about this because you were not in a creepy way, but you were in my head. The amount of times that you said, why aren't they ambushing fastballs? I don't know how many times we watch guys take heaters down the chute. How happy were you to see the Astros, their approach to Wheeler, when instead of waiting, when we're gonna run his pitch count up and all that nonsense, where you're 0-2 against a guy like that, and he's flipping one, you got no shot. 4 pitches into the game, they got 3 doubles and 2 runs. You're screaming all the time for guys in today's day and age to do that. Why don't more hitters try and do that and ambush heaters early?
Well, that's the key to hitting great pitching. You ambush them. I don't care if it's Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens, Dwight Gooden, Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, John Smokes. You can name them. Anytime you're facing these guys, when you're sitting there telling as a team, when your scouts come around and say you want to get the pitch count up and then get to their bullpen, that's a bad philosophy. Because the bottom line is, this guy's going to be around the plate. He wants strike one. Because once a great pitcher gets strike one, they pretty much finish you. So basically, you make them work hard to get that strike one. They have to make a great pitch on the first pitch. But even if they make a great pitch, now you've seen it before. So now they don't have anything great to go back to but their fastball. So, and try to spot it. And if they don't spot it, they make mistakes. So I always have the philosophy of, if a guy's a fastball pitcher, he has a good breaking ball, but his best pitch is 97. So I'm going to take his 97 away, and I'm going to make him an 80s pitcher. The 80, 85, 89 breaking ball. And they don't feel comfortable throwing that pitch a majority of the time. So if you ambush them, they know you're ambushing them. They put that fastball in their back pocket.
Yeah, we got 2 years of the 7 that I did with you in the back pocket next to the guy we call the old goat, and he's certifiably nuts, is Dusty Baker, in the best way. And I'm sitting there, as I know you are, and look, it's nothing against the Phillies or anything, and they got good people on that team too. But it's hard for people like you and I not to root for Dusty Baker to get these 4 and finally get one. You know how bad he wants it. What's the thing that could get this team? I mean, because if it's not bad breaks, they got a better pitching staff, right, in terms of their depth. They get all the hitters you could ever want. Now Altuve's hot again. He had 3 hits, right? I know they blew a 5-0 lead, but really they could have easily been up 2-0 in this series. Do you feel confident this is the one Dusty gets? I mean, I know we're 1-1 in a game 3. Anything could happen, but how confident are you that we're going to be sitting there texting Dusty here in a few days? Congratulations on finally getting one.
Well, I think this is a pretty much even series. And anytime you're talking about your bullpen is your strength, you can't really say that about Houston because their starting pitchers, their strength as well. But the thing is that, these guys going deep in the game, which it keeps pitchers out of the game where in a 7-game series, you don't get to see them. And when the more they see the bullpen, then you'll start seeing a swing in the bullpen and not being so effective the more they're out there. And I think that starting pitching for Houston Astros has been doing a good job and how they're getting the ball in the 5th and 6th inning. And with that being said, now you can do matchups. You can let a guy go an inning without seeing Bryce Harper, or let another guy go another inning without seeing Bryce Harper. And the key to it all is, you want to make sure that guy is facing Bryce, the matchup is in your favor. Because anytime you're in a big situation, you want to have a pitcher on the mound that has a good track record against him, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have good numbers on a guy when the game is on the line. So I just think that this is the best opportunity Dusty's ever had to win a championship. He's been on some good teams. He made good teams great. But if you look at their lineup all the way through, pitching staff, bullpen, this is probably the most solid team Dusty's ever had. And I think that with his pedigree and what he knows, I think, and we always say great managers will win you some games. And I think it's going to come down to Dusty having to win a game for his team.
I want to hit you on a couple more, and you know how much I appreciate you coming on. And I just on some other, first of all, Aaron Judge, and we haven't talked about this, but he had such a fantastic year. He's a terrific player. It's hard to do that in New York. You know that better than anybody, and to handle it as well as he has, right, in New York, the way he has. But, and I know you hold words on this either. He's in a pretty decent spot, Chef, in terms of about to get a couple of bags of money.
Yeah.
If you're in that spot, what's the advice to an Aaron Judge with a Yankee team that let him date? They let him go out there now and go see what else is out there in San Francisco, right? Go closer to home, or in LA, or with Steve Cohen and the Mets. What's your advice if you're talking to Aaron Judge about this free agent decision right now?
Whatever you have to do to stay in New York with the Yankees, that's what you make happen. Wherever you have success, stay there and have success. I've been on other teams. It ain't like going anywhere else after New York. You go to New York, there's no going nowhere else because it's going to be a letdown. I don't care what rivalry you go to or what organization that may be a great organization. It's still not the same as being somewhere you have success. And that would be my advice to him, as the same advice I gave to Robinson Cano. I told him that once you leave New York, your career is not going to be the same. And you don't go from that to being held responsible and accountable on every pitch, every play, to going somewhere else where there's a let up. Because nobody wants to win like people want to win in New York. And no other organization is going to demand what they demand from you in New York. So to get you to your optimal best, you have to be in New York. But because of his personality, is a laid back personality. You see, he's an even keel guy. If you go to a situation where the fans ain't as into the game like people are in New York, you may have a letdown in performance. So I would be cautious in leaving, and I would try to do everything in my power to make sure it happens.
Chef, I want to follow on that quick if I can, because look, I think it's amazing. To your point, people always think like you got to be some crazy. You could be even keeled to play in the U.S. Bernie Williams even keeled, right? You could be a lot of, but you have to be able to embrace in some ways what it is. You can't be afraid of it, and that's why when we hear reports, and who knows where these reports come out, as well as I do, right? I get it, and I know I'm a member of the media, quote unquote, but I'm not like that. But some people, you never know where these things come out of. But for people for any player to complain that they're getting booed when you got swept off the field, you struck out 1,000,000 times, you couldn't score, you're dropping pop flies. I mean, you're playing for the Yankees, Garrett. I mean, that's what I'm sitting there and thinking. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you can't be doing that. What's the fortitude it takes in here that's different for everywhere else to succeed in a place like New York? And what was your reaction when you heard about perhaps maybe players being upset that they got booed after they got swept?
Well, I think Russell Westbrook is dealing with the same thing in basketball with the Lakers, and they're similar situations. All they know is banners. And if you come there, they don't care what you did in other places. They don't care how great they say you are. You have to understand they're looking for banners. The boos are not personal. That's just a reaction. And their reaction is they expect to see great baseball all the time. Hard played baseball. And when they don't see that, they're going to let you know. So you can't take it personal. You can't look at it any kind of way. You can use it as fuel, actually. And the thing is that when they booing our team or booing an individual player, the first thought that should come to your head is, I know how to silence the boos by performing. And so that's the only thing that how you neutralize booing is you perform. And so a lot of players don't like to be booed because they don't like to be noticed and talked about. and brought to the forefront and held responsible for certain things. If you're a great player, you embrace the responsibility. You embrace the boos, the cheers, and you treat them all the same. That's why that's why I love Judd, the way he goes about his business. You don't know if he's up, you don't know when he's down. He embraces that. And I think that he's been through the tough times in New York when he was striking out and not doing too much hitting and not hitting the home runs that we're all accustomed to, we don't got used to seeing. I think that he's the perfect guy to play in that city. And so I think that when guys come to New York, they crumble under the pressure because they don't like to they don't like to sit out front and be talked about. And then now they have to go back and dig deep and perform. A lot of people don't know how to do that.
No, look, it's tough. I said the other day, it's not just New York. I mean, a guy we know, one of the great dudes in the game. I mean, see, Carl Crawford was like one of the best players in the league in Tampa Bay. You go to Boston, it's crazy animal. It's not the contract. It's just like that's a different. You got 4 beat writers in Tampa Bay and like 8 fans in the crowd, and then you go to Boston. It's difficult. I want to shoot you one more here, and then I'll let you run. I appreciate all this time, but I think. To me, one of the things I want to bring this to viewers and listeners, I always hear about slowing the game down. And I hear every announcer say it in every game and every pitcher and everybody talk about it. And I think, even though I don't play and a lot of the people who are listening and watching don't, we all been in a job interview or on a date you're nervous or you're asking somebody to marry you or everybody got their own scenario, right? So we've all been in that your heartbeat is getting like this and you're nervous even though you're excited. How did you handle those moments? You were so great in those spots at driving in runs and in postseason games. What are hitters doing when they're successful at that? Take me into that kind of a moment here in a game like Game 3 that we'll see tonight.
Well, I think once the moments start building, it starts in the on deck circle. Guys have they that struggle and big moments. It starts on the on deck circle because they're seeing that I may be the guy that has to get it done. And so, like I said, a lot of guys don't want to be out front. They don't want to be all the cameras on them, all eyes on you. They don't want that. They don't want that kind of action. But for me, and I think for Judd and guys like that, and guys that come through the Trouts, the Harpers, I think it starts in the batter's box, and it starts with, hey, this is what I want. I want this guy to get on so it can be and fall on me. And so when you get up there, I don't care who I'm facing. I don't care if he has success on me or not. I know how to think my way through the situation to get it done. And so really, I always looked at it from a crazier standpoint. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I can make an out, and I'm not going to jail. Nobody's going to hurt me. So all it is baseball at the end of the day. And as simple as that may sound, that's basically what it is. It's a baseball game that I'm paid to play, and I'm really good at it, and I'm the best at it, as a matter of fact. So I'm gonna just go show one more time what I'm the best at. And so I go in there and I control the situation and I control my thoughts. Basically it's just me and him. And now I got a game plan and I'm gonna stick to it.
How close are you to feeling that on the golf course?
Just a hard game, man.
You're getting better, but you're getting there. You're getting there. That's all that matters. Dude, I love you, man. You're one of my favorite people on earth. Forget about baseball or not. Appreciate you. Thanks for a few, Chef. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, there he is, Gary Sheffield, my dude. Appreciate him for hopping on board here with us at October Unfiltered on the Believe Network. And, of course, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, everywhere you get your podcast, appreciate you just as much as we get you set for Game 3 of the World Series between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Houston Astros. And, again, in a game like this tonight, especially with that extra day, now there's no complaints about what bullpens are weary or who's tired, who can't get it done. Everybody going to be ready. All systems go out of the chute. Ranger Suarez on one end, Lance McCullers on the other, and we will have all of it to recap tomorrow. Jeff Blum going to join me. We'll recap Game 3. We'll preview Game 4. We're with you live every day at noon Eastern. You can jump on board with us 3 ways on my Twitter at Casey Stern, YouTube, my YouTube, and that believes as well. We appreciate everybody for hopping on board. Joe Ceraulo, Gary Sheffield, and of course, the folks who make all this possible, because we, as always, are presented by our good friends at Bet Online. We'll see you next time on October Unfiltered.